What's happening, everybody? So this video is probably going to be one of the more boring videos that you'll watch, and we are talking about dipsticks in this video, namely Hellcat dipsticks. And if you're new to the Hellcat community, let's say you've bought yourself a 2015 or a 2016 Hellcat, you may not have heard of this, but there are different dipsticks for each one of these cars and different fill capacities that you may see. Or you may be changing the oil in your car and you put the recommended amount of oil in it only to have it show higher on the dipstick than possibly that it should. So I'm going to walk you through some of the reasons on that real quickly. So if you've got an earlier car and you've got the owner's manual in that car, you may see where the owner's manual had a capacity of 7.5 quarts. That was deemed to be inaccurate, and there was an addendum that was released that would include this particular dipstick. It's a Bob dipstick, and it has a part number of 68174984AC. The reason why this was included is this would give you a 6-quart capacity reading dipstick. In other words, this dipstick would basically be used for a 6-quart oil change. Well, later cars, it was deemed needed more oil and it was bumped up to basically 7 quarts. But the thing here is that it's not 7 quarts as you would change the oil at your house. In other words, you drive the car up on ramps, pull the cover off, drain the oil, put a filter in it, put your oil in the crankcase, fire it up and go. Not quite like that. That is a full 7 quarts provided that you are evacuating the entire oiling system, which nobody really does. I know some of you diehards do, but a lot of folks don't. So in that case, they would say that, well, it's 7 quarts capacity, but the real number is between 6 and 6.5 quarts. And that number varies a little bit by, well, how jacked up in the front is your car and how much of the system are you actually draining when you drain that thing on ramps. So the point of that is that the way that I change my oil in my car is that I will put the car on ramps, drain the oil after I've let the car warm up for a little bit, drain the oil, pull the filter, fill the oil filter up with oil, put the filter in the car, and put 5 quarts in the crankcase. Fire the thing up, get it off the ramps, pull it forward after I've put the cover back on, obviously, and all of that came first. But park it, let it sit for a few minutes, and then I'll start filling the crankcase up until the oil level gets to a full level on the dipstick. Now, I'm used to this dipstick. I'm used to this, the last two being AC, the 6-quart dipstick. But what I do is I would fill it to where I could feel oil easily on the, what I guess would be the top part of this bob, but we're holding it like this. So right here at the bottom, that would be about, excuse me, that'd be about 6 quarts. And the main idea is just make sure you've got the whole thing covered and you're covering the dot. And I would always make sure that this whole bob was covered in oil. If I hold this dipstick with the latest dipstick, which is a blade type, you'll see that the bob, the top of that bob is about 1/3 of the way, not quite a half of the way, in between where the hash marks are, the 2 little dots, are for the blade style dipstick. The blade style dipstick with a full 6 quarts plus any oil in that filter will bring the oil level up to right at that bottom, or it really would be the top, but right at that second hole right there. So that's how I do my oil changes. Now, there are some benefits to having a Bob style dipstick. And one of those benefits is every time you change the oil, every time you check the oil, you're not dragging a bunch of oil up that dipstick tube, which ends up getting all over this thing. And you're looking at it, you're like, really, where is the dang, you know how it is when you're looking at one of these things where you're trying to go, okay, is that the level? Then you flip it over and you got to like hold your head just right and move it around and make sure you get the shimmy just where it shines and all that. But at least this will give you an accurate reading once you translate where that level really is, what with all the rest of the oil coating the blade style dipstick tube. The cool thing about the Bob is that it's really easy and clean. The only downside is that if you've got an older style dipstick tube that's a Bob that isn't an 18, I think it's 2018 had the Bob style, but it was shorter, again, by about 1/4 of an inch, that would allow you to have the right oil level. That part number is going to be 530108223AA, which, by the way, at the time of this filming is real difficult to find. You're going to find the 530108223AC, which is going to be that replacement blade type dipstick. So if you go to the Dodge dealership and you want this newer, higher capacity dipstick, you don't need the tube, they're going to give you one that looks like this. Now again, this can be a little bit of a pain to work with when you're changing the oil like I do, where you add oil, check it, add a little bit more, check it. Is that about right? Because I'm real, like, I'll get down to like just a, and then, but that's just me. I'm kind of anal retentive when it comes to that kind of stuff. But anyway, the whole idea behind this is a little bit easier to use if you're changing the oil like that. The only downside is that if your Bob isn't long enough, in other words, or this Bob sits too far down, that oil gets on the cable portion of this thing, and then you can't really see where it's at. There's no way to discern that. You can't look at it, turn it, or anything like that to see where the level is. So you only have this range. Now, you can still change your oil if you've got this older style dipstick. You just have to make sure that when you change your oil that you do have oil at least to that portion of the Bob, or just fill your filter up and then put 6 quarts in the crankcase and you'll be fine. So anyway, wanted to walk you guys through that. I know there's a lot of new Hellcat owners that have been watching my channel. Congratulations on the new baby. Just know that there are some differences to these dipsticks, and the reality is, look, as long as you're changing the oil, that's the most important thing. Fill the filter up first. I use the SRT filter from Mopar. Fill that thing up full of oil, put 5 quarts in the crankcase, get the thing off the ramps, and then, if you really want to get real down in dirty with getting just the right level, then you can do it like I do, or you can do it like basically probably everybody else, and just run with 6 quarts in the crankcase, fill up the filter, and call it good. So anyway, I hope that helps you guys out, and with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Y'all have a great one. Adios.